What if, starting right now, before our children are 8 years old, it isn't normal anymore for them to go to school? What if instead we paid close attention to our children's individual curiosities and their challenges as the very best material we've got for being the most relevant we can be to their growth and adding the most real value to their lives in ways that support their uniqueness, that support how they're testing out, figuring out how to engage with the world, what matters most to them, and what they could actually really use the most support with. What if now we could suddenly agree that we can't possibly bring a predetermined agenda to this age group, 0 to 8, and expect to support them as much as we could with our pure presence, better observation skills, better contemplative skills, planning skills, and better skills on how to inspire them and engage with them. I am a stand that supporting children from 0 to 8 years old is best seen as a dance between closely observing them, thoughtfully reflecting on their challenges and their interests, and considering the great ideas that we find and have to offer them, and preparing simple strategies, explanations, materials, environments, and invitations to inspire and engage them with what's really relevant to their lives. Not with shaming them, but with mirroring the exact innocent curiosity and raw energy that they're exhibiting. So we know that kids learn to walk and to talk and to sing the ABCs on their own time when it's fun and it's inspired. And learning to read and write between the ages of 5 to 8 years old, especially when it happens in a more formalized setting, what if we thought that can be as organic and fun and natural as it was to learn to walk and talk and sing the ABCs? And maybe we might want to consider not whipsawing to the complete unschooling end of the spectrum approach for their whole life. Maybe some skills will be relevant for them as building blocks for what they might want to do. But for sure, some principles of unschooling, for example, are developmentally really relevant and aligned with the very young children. And we want to start looking at the methodologies that are available now and seeing where they fit along the arc of natural developmental markers and inclinations in the spectrum. So what I'd love to see is a mass migration to new ways of how we can set our children up to be hungry to learn and to know how to learn, to know themselves, to be kind and respectful to others, along with a lot of the pillars of pre-curriculum that I'm leading us to in this conversation. I'd love to see all parents and all people around children who aren't already, and to even strengthen your skills if you are, to get really amazing at inspiring our children, setting up contexts for them that are simple and true, and giving them the foundation and the meta skills that they need. So by the time they are hitting pre-puberty, between 8 and 12, they're well equipped to self-author their own lives in a really powerful, responsible, self-choosing way, and that they are the greatest informants in designing the core of their academic life. And just like with antibiotics or medications, there's plenty of side effects to academic pressures for young children that we want to become more aware of as we enter this time in history. Because it's been well documented that when we put academic pressure on young people too early, that's not relevant to their lives. it can really extinguish their natural love of learning, or it can cause external seeking self-worth patterns. And it's a great time in history to really think about education as a living process, as a lifelong process, versus, as Oliver DeMille writes in the book Leadership Education, getting predetermined ideas on what to think as dictated by others in order to get the right answers and be good students and fit in with an externally imposed structure defining worth. Which, I don't know about you, but for me was okay, except I feel that for a lot of people I've talked to, it ends up, requiring we go on some level of soul retrieval and finding our sense of self-worth from an internal structure when we're grown-ups, if we, succeed in the school system. So I want to seriously challenge the notion that our kids are best served in the classroom setting through what has been kindergarten through second grade for starters, and replace that idea with a new normal, enter the picture, pre-curriculum foundations for life, which I'll refer to as the center point of our life spiral as human beings, which I'll talk about in a later video. These foundations are what become automatic for us in our life, unconscious, subconscious, and create the foundational patterns, habits, beliefs, and lenses through which a person sees their whole world through first. These foundations create our first and most essential structures of what's possible, what's normal, what's in bounds and out of bounds, what's moral, what's ethical, what's right, what human rights are, what human needs are. They develop our capacities of how to think, how to make meaning, how to lovingly relate, how to address conflict, how to self-regulate, how to love self, how to know yourself as awareness first, how to orient around connection to other as a relationship to our mutual no-thingness consciousness that we all have in common, not the comparison of the ego. And this then, manifests outwards from there as individual, then community, then family, then community, then systemic, then global value structures that include and build on one another and create our world. And it's in this pre-curriculum foundation phase, 0 to 8, is the first time that we have access to setting this up for ourselves. And we can always revisit it, which is lovely. Clue into the life spiral. It's in this foundation that we can establish a precedence that leaves room for uniqueness and diversity, but not division. Now, the center point of our life spiral is first formed when we're 0 to 8 years old. And this is the first and most powerful opportunity we have to establish a strong center point that makes or breaks us until we potentially go in and, as adults, work at the subconscious level and create a new underlying belief structure for ourselves, which very few people know how to do. So, in this powerful opportunity to establish a strong center point, I'd argue this needs to be the focal point of ages 0 to 8, before the transition to and puberty, which those in themselves have special developmental inclinations and desires we can align with as well, which we'll talk about in another video. The center point, pre-curriculum of childhood, can be a sacred time to establish base level habits for lifelong subconscious definitions of success. Things like contextual values, experiential interdependence, sovereignty, personal power and responsibility, radical compassion, body temple arts, relationship to self, other, earth, capacity baseline building like NBC, communications, kindness, mindfulness, inclusion, collaboration, global family context, equanimity, self-love, soul nurturance, mind, body, emotional health. This is the time of life that it's ideal to experience, recognize, and embody natural rhythms, to focus on relationships and how we do good relationships, to think about and experience in the body things like truth, truthfulness, and how we make meaning. Up through the traditionally thought of second grade, it's really a sacred time of wholeness, where Mistakes are best welcomed and guided. Emotions are best felt fully, not made into stories, or even the innocent question of what's wrong, but gently guided towards emotions as raw energy, release, guided towards possibility, points of resolution, better communication strategies. After we fully see and hear and feel and are able to meet children in their raw and fully expressed energy of emotions that they're experiencing for the first time, and help guide them to appropriate feeling social etiquette options for emotional release and self-care. What world do we get to live in when we start giving this to our children? I'm so excited. Because everything that I'm talking about, this is where the new story of education begins. I'm Christina McCallion, for those of you who are seeing my videos for the first time, and I'm creating actually a leadership launch for parents who want to create a solid foundation for their family and homeschool their children. And I'm actually creating an educational methodology for my family that starts here. And I want to help families create one that's unique for them through an experiential process that I've been going through myself the last 5 years. I'm really, really excited. It would be my just greatest heart's contentment to see this message get out there for people to give this to our children. Because I feel like it's really time that we start visiting seriously the growing world of reformed education methodologies that are available and upgrade our thinking capacities and arrive on our own solid ground for ourselves that we build intentional lives from. So this is where the new story of education begins from my seat, and I'm honored to be one of the many people who will be telling it for the coming years.